Welcome to the Christian Theological Dark Web. I'm your host, Ricky Lee, alongside Shelley and I. Today we are talking about our new series titled The Quiet Rebellion. Today's episode is called The Middle Voice. We hope you enjoy. Welcome, guys. Welcome to the Christian Theological Dark Web. I would technically say probably our first real episode. Last episode was just kind of an intro about who we are, what we do, or what we want to do, what we think, what our opinions are, and where this podcast has the intention of going. I would like to say that this first episode is called The Middle Voice, and it is based on a book by Mr. Tyler Staton. I have it right here in front of me. I highly recommend it. Shelley and I did the audiobook. I'd like to say hello. This is my co-host. Hi, Shell. Say hi.
Good morning, everybody.
Good
Happy
morning.
Today, whatever today is for you.
It's Saturday for us. In theory, I'm dropping this episode at the end of the month, so whatever day the 31st falls on. I'm not sure what that is. Welcome, guys. This is part of our series called The Silent Rebellion. The reason it's titled The Silent Rebellion is because we are talking about prayer. And we're not talking about prayer in the superficial sense. Prayer is a deep vehicle to speak to God, to move the heavens, to be moved by the heavens, all that good stuff, and to shoo cats from the line of view.
Shoo cats from the line of view. Sorry, I have my weapon of choice
There
to keep them away.
I won't be playing so many soundboard stuff on the next one. Don't worry, guys. I'm just having fun with it because we're kind of new.
Because it's new.
That's right. Yeah, it's like a shiny toy I have to touch. Guys, this is a really great book, and I'm kind of giving the intro because Shell is going to take the reins here in a second, and really. She's the one that kind of researched this one, really wanted to talk about it. We picked 3 topics from this particular book, which I highly, highly, highly recommend you buy.
Absolutely worth every cent.
Every single penny. If you are going to listen to this podcast, you definitely should pick up a copy of this. It's a pretty brand new book, right? She came out in October of last year, I think you said?
October.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
October
super new.
2022.
2022, circa 2023, not quite. But it's available on audiobook, which is how we first listened to it and got in contact with it. I finally got a hold of a physical copy to kind of go through and think through the ideas that's there. But you should definitely look for it. It's Tyler Staton's book, and it is absolutely phenomenal. Again, we're talking about the middle voice today and what that means. I guess at this point, Shell, it's all you. Take it away. I'll just drop some comments here and there, but it's all up to you, buddy.
Sounds excellent.
Transition time.
So, oh man, he found all the buttons.
That's right. I did indeed.
I've talked to so many people recently, probably the last year, asking, hey, do you feel like your prayer game is good? Do you feel like it's where it should be, like you're a boss at prayer? And it's funny, the people who are like, yeah, absolutely, know what I'm doing. I'm like, you don't pray. You might bless your food, you might, God, get me out of this type thing, but you don't pray. Because when you pray, when you have a heart of really communicating with God, I don't think you're ever satisfied with your prayers. I know I'm not. I know the disciples weren't. These were friends of Jesus who came to him and said, hey, teach us how to pray. And that got me thinking, because I hear this and it makes me literally mad. I will talk back to podcasts or TV or even my own pastor if he says something like this. Oh, the disciples were just ignorant fishermen. Nabra, they weren't. They were not ignorant fishermen. They were fishermen and tax collectors and blah blah blah. What their various employments, but they were educated. They
Mm-hmm.
knew how to pray this simple prayer. I don't know how many of you know this prayer. If you do, give us a thumbs up. Shema Israel Adonai, Eloheinu Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kovod, Malchuto Laolam Vaed. We might be able to quote it in English for, those of us who grew up in the church. Hear Israel. Adonai our God, Adonai is one. And you are to love Adonai your God with all your heart, all your being, and all your resources.
Mm-hmm.
That's Deuteronomy 6, 4, and 5. I chose the complete Jewish version to give you, the CJB. Um, because it's a little bit different than the one I would quote off my head, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your strength.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I particularly
but
like that
these
it references your resources. I think that's really good.
good.
Sorry.
I liked it too. No, I liked it better than strength because strength, you think strength. And when I saw resources, I was like, oh, that's so much better. Everything that God gives us, we have the opportunity to love Him with, which is why, isn't that why we have it?
Mm-hmm.
But that is also a topic for another
Sorry,
time.
just
So,
want to throw that out there.
I know, it really caught me too. So I'm right there with you. The Shema is a prayer that Jews pray twice a day. Those simple ignorant fishermen, they prayed this twice a day, along with a dozen other prayers. I'd already told Ricky, like I asked Google's because it's 2023. You have a question, you ask Google. How many times is prayer referenced in the Bible? And I got crummy answers. I did not get anything very good. You know what? Let's do this. Hey Siri. Oh yeah, I don't do Apple.
Oh my
How
gosh.
about Hey Alexa, how many times how many times does the Bible reference prayer?
From reference.com, that number varies depending on the version of the Bible, but in general, prayer seems to be referenced over 600 times.
Okay, I know you guys probably didn't hear her,
Just barely.
but she said in general, prayer seems to be referenced over 600 times in the Bible, depending on your version.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that's about what Google had given me to 300 to 600 times. Um, if somebody wants to write us in with an answer and give us an exact based on their version, please do. I'm interested to
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, that's cool.
But because I wasn't satisfied with that answer, I started looking at, well, how many prayers are there in Jewish life? Turns out I quit counting. Um, like I said, the Shema is done at least twice a day. They have prayers for everything. Like there are prayers for everything. And a Jew, like most Christians, will pray to bless food before they eat it. But if they forget to bless a food, so long as there's still some left, they can bless it then before they've taken the last bite.
Mm-hmm.
And when you bless your food, you don't like get up from the table and go do something. You start eating it right away. But there's a certain prayer if you eat cake. There's a different prayer if you eat nuts. There's different. There's a specific prayer for like cashews.
Mm.
Prayers specifically for the foods that God blesses Israel with, like the pomegranate,
Mm-hmm.
olives.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I was super impressed. There's a prayer that you do when you wash your hands in the morning. There's prayers you do in the afternoon because if you go back to that Deuteronomy 6, 4, and 5, the Shema. that I quoted, and you go on. God says, take my words and talk to them about your children when y'all are playing Xbox, when
Hmm.
you are cleaning the backyard, when you're driving somewhere, when you're just chilling at home. I mean, this is obviously my paraphrase. um, Take them, bind them on your arm, bind them on your arm, bind them around your head, write them on the doorposts of your house.
Hmm.
And and maybe you feel led to do that literally, but even if you do it figuratively, it means make God's word central to your life. And that's where those ignorant fishermen lived. They lived there. They lived in the, let's talk about it when we're walking down the street, when we're hauling in our nets, when we're
Hmm.
tucking our kids in, when we're getting them up. They were not ignorant to prayer.
Yeah, exactly what you're saying. In particular, Shell, I was looking at the part where it says you had referenced here in your notes, and I thought it was really interesting because I made sure to go over the references and stuff so I kind of understood where you're coming from, and it's a good question, right? Why were the disciples asking Jesus teach us how to pray, or telling him please teach us how to pray, when they were seasoned veterans in this kind of thing, right? Like, we'll see in the next episode
Absolutely.
that prayer rhythm was a very common thing. In the morning at 9 you were at temple praying, midday you were praying, and in the afternoon you were praying. There were set times for prayer all the time. Sounds actually surprisingly, or maybe not so much surprisingly, very similar to the Muslim world, right? There's a very set time for prayer, and there's a very set way to do prayer, right? Um, and again, we'll get more into that in the future, but I really wanted to touch on what the Bible says about it in Luke. I think Luke is my favorite gospel at the moment. One day, totally,
Mine too right now. It's just a treasure
it's
trove this month.
crazy stuff. Good book. One day, Jesus was praying in a certain place. When he finished, one of his disciples said to him, "Lord, teach us to pray just as John taught his disciples to pray." Now, we can leave out the John part or whatever, but what I find fascinating is that they were waiting for Jesus to finish praying. That is very interesting to me. When
Right.
you have a master, or a rabbi, right, or a teacher of some sort, of course you wait till they're done doing stuff, but you only do that if you're really, really interested in what they have to say and learning from them. Not just anybody would sit around and wait for the master to be done doing the thing that you want to ask about, right? And I think that, in my opinion, this is just me, right? It's conjecture, but I kind of think that the disciples were enamored with the way that Jesus prayed. They were awestruck by it, surprised by it, and inspired by it. And so I think that probably plays largely into the reason that they asked Jesus to teach them to pray. Not just because John did it with his disciples. I
Absolutely.
think that, to me, I think that's a tagline, right? Like, a lot of times when we ask for something, we want to give a qualifier for it, right? And so that to me seems like more like a qualifier than an actual request. The actual request in my mind, right, is that Jesus says, hey, or that the disciples say, hey, Jesus, teach us to pray. Of course, just like John does, because that's the thing that rabbis do. They teach their disciples to pray. Um,
Right.
yeah, yeah, good stuff.
That's funny then, because the implication is that they weren't yet sure enough of him to realize that that's what he couldn't wait to do.
Hmm,
Man, people, we're funny.
good stuff. Yeah, yeah.
It's such good stuff.
You know what, Shaw? I was
Um,
also thinking. I forgot to mention at the beginning, but I should give you guys an important disclaimer about this. Right now, we're talking about prayer, and that's intentional. I want to try and make everybody that's listening to us kind of aware, acutely aware of the necessity for prayer. The reason that I'm doing that is because the information that we will be covering going forward will not serve you well unless you are praying. It may in fact be the
Absolutely.
opposite, a hindrance or a problem for you. So I really do want to throw that, and I really mean that seriously. I mean that disclaimer seriously, that the topics that we're going to talk about are going to get even heavier, So I mean, this is now. I wouldn't say it's light. Prayer is not a light thing, and you'll see that it's not light. But if you're not praying, you're not going to understand what God is doing through the filter that He wants to. And that's fine. If you're not a believer, you're welcome to
Right.
sit and listen. Like, I think you'll find this intriguing, regardless. But if you're a believer and you're not praying and thinking about these things, like, man, you're doing yourself to be diplomatic. You're doing yourself a huge disservice, because prayer is a relational discovery. It is not a thing. It is not a formula to be figured out.
Right. Well, you're stealing my thunder there, Ricky.
Oh, sorry.
But it's
I won't get
okay.
over, I
I'll
swear.
take some years later.
Yeah, that's fine.
You will.
Take
You
as much as
will.
you
It's,
want.
it's all right. It's give and take.
I'm just excited about this
Um,
topic.
no, you're right, and you're right to say that, because I know that our bait is that we're going to talk about weird things,
Hmm.
and we are, but we will talk about anything that you bring to us, which is why prayer is vital, because
Hmm.
I have good opinions, and I think Ricky has good opinions. We talk about our opinions all the time with each other. We've got good opinions, but it's an opinion, and God's the only one who has absolute truth and the rightest answers.
Yeah.
And you get those in his word and in prayer, man. You seek him out, and you cannot seek him out without praying.
Hmm.
You can go to his word, but even going to the word is a form of prayer, because you go to it with the unspoken or spoken intention. Teach me something. Let me learn something of
Yep.
you as I get into this. So very, very good. When we talk about behemoths and Nephilim, you
Oh, they're
you
coming.
can go down the craziest rabbit trails if you don't have some foundation,
Hmm.
some grounding, and
Thank you for saying
this
that, Shelley.
this is foundational.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is
It's
foundational
also it's
because we
also
don't want.
essential, right?
Absolutely. We don't want to be those wackadoodles that are out there. There's some crazies. There are some really great resources, and we will name drop all of them as we um, have the opportunity to, because there are some people with godly wisdom about subjects, and there are some people, again, wackadoodle will be my term, that might need to go on a t-shirt at some time, Ricky. Whack a
Mm.
doodle.
That's a good. Yeah.
um but to get back on topic, we kind of have, I think, established that those disciples, fishermen though they were not ignorant. They weren't ignorant of praying. And I want to go on to piggyback with Ricky's question of what is prayer then, because Rick said it's not an equation. I remember thinking it was an equation.
Hmm.
I remember when my first husband, you know what, I guess I'll just drop some personal information here. I've been married 3 times. My first husband is the father of my oldest son. And when my son was about a year old, we found out he had HIV. Now, I didn't get it. My son didn't get it. But his dad had it, and it ended up taking his life. But we were Christians, and we went. Um, this is also back in 1989, so I'll give you some reference. HIV and AIDS was still new to the scene. People didn't know what it was. We knew that it was killing very select portions of the population. So this white guy I was married to, who's a heterosexual, should not have had it, but he did. By all of the wisdom of the time, which was not a whole lot. Anyhow, there was a lot of stigma. I did what I always do with a challenge. After I go for a little bit, I get educated. And that's exactly what we did. We became certified with the Red Cross to teach people, because we didn't want this life that we were living to touch other people. I don't want anybody to get that stupid disease. It robs you of dignity, and it's especially did back then.
Yeah.
Anyhow, we were active. We were proactive. Um, you can find stuff on YouTube. I guess you don't know that, Rick. You can find stuff on YouTube. You might even be able to find an old PBS interview we did back in, I don't know, 1992 about Scott having HIV
Oh
and
wow.
what it was like for us with a little child to
Wow.
deal with it and his imminent demise. But we went to a lot of churches and finding a place where we fit, where there wasn't the judgment, which there's a lot of judgment. So I have a heart for people who feel judged because it stinks to feel like everybody is looking at you and whispering behind their hands. But we would go up for prayer like faithfully. We prayed. I have been raised to pray. I have done stints at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Mm.
When my church was doing 24-hour prayer for things, I'd get up with my mom and we'd go to pray, and then we would clean the church because that's how we paid for my school because I went to the school at the church. Um, but I know how to run to God when I have something going on in my life. And we would go and we moved to a different state to try to start afresh
Mm.
because you do that when
Yeah.
you're trying to survive something that's harsh that has a lot of condemnation with it.
Yeah.
And we went to a church and we would go up for prayer, and when he wasn't getting healed, it was um because we didn't have the right kind of faith, because there was some sort of sin in our life, something was going on. It wasn't because it was God's will that we endure this trial. It wasn't part of God's plan that he would do something through, and I don't know what, maybe he's doing something today through it.
Mm.
It was not it wasn't that we live in a fallen world where sin has dominion and crappy things happen a lot. None of those were the reason. It was only because we didn't know the formula, the equation to pray right.
Yeah.
And that's how we felt. And that was heavy. It 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 hurt. It hurt him. It hurt me. Um it it's not It's not an uncommon belief, though, about prayer, that prayer is an equation. If you plug in A and B and C, you're going to get the answer. You
Yeah.
will get X and you will get Y. Um, but it took me a long, long time as a Christian to understand that
Mm.
prayer is not an equation. Um, is prayer a command? It's 100% a command. We are told, pray in the Spirit on all occasions with all kinds of prayers and requests. With this in mind, be alert and always keep on praying for all the saints. We are admonished again and again and again, pray with prayer and thanksgiving. Make your requests known before God. Those are just the two that I can think of Pauline um, admonishments to pray.
Mm.
We're always supposed to pray. So, yeah, it's a command, but it's so much more than that. Is it a place that we can go and whine? I think so.
Mm-hmm.
I can whine to you about my situation, and you know what? I can get you to commiserate with me. So I got some attention, but not much else. Or maybe you'll have some solutions for me and some good advice. Or I can whine, what is it? Vertically, right? Vertically.
Mm-hmm.
I can go to God and I can say, you know what? I don't like these things. Moses did it. You took us out of Israel or out of Egypt, and you brought us right here. Now we're between the literal rock and the water, the hard place. And I look like an idiot, Lord. Did you bring us here to die? What are we going to do? And then God answered. But Moses didn't whine to Aaron. Aaron whined to Moses about
Yeah.
it. Why did you bring us here? But Moses went and he whined vertically,
Hmm.
and he said, what am I supposed to do now? This your idea. You better do something. Yeah, it's your thing.
Yeah.
You have something to say? Say it.
No, yeah, I was just thinking about
Oh,
uh, the fact that that it's an it's an interplay, right? Which is what we're really talking about. Like Aaron is like, okay, this is the situation. So what's going on here, right? What's going on here often sounds like a demand, but I don't think that that's the case. I think that Aaron was really like, what do I do? Which implies a relational situation, and you are dealing with a relational being, right? For
absolutely.
infinitely more
Yeah.
intelligent, patient, loving, all of the above, right? All of the human qualities that we have, God is
Powerful.
infinitely more than all of those that we have, right? Obviously. But he is still
Right.
a relational being, which is a very curious aspect of God and does not make prayer
For
straightforward.
a God.
Yeah.
Right. For a God. He is the only deity that says, come, let us reason together.
Hmm.
I have never seen that opportunity, boasted of by those who pray to
No.
Juno or to Zeus. I don't
No.
think he ever said, "Yeah,
God
come on, let's."
Godhood almost brought with it a pompousness, right? I mean, that's like by definition, being God. Most people, when they think of being deified or godlike, there's pomp to that. There's I'm better than everyone else. I'm higher than everyone else. It's a sort of
Do
it's a
what I
caste
said.
it's a caste system in as a thought experiment, right? For us as
Mhm.
humans when we try to exalt ourselves as gods. So, yeah, it's definitely not the norm, I would say.
It is not. And I mean, if you're going to go and whinge to the one who can really do something about it. And in first voice, these are the things that we bring to God. And there's nothing wrong with praying in first voice. There's nothing wrong with bringing in your complaints to God. He's the best place to go. He can get it fixed way
Yeah.
better than
Or
customer care ever could.
just as a super hopping in there, first voice. When Shell says first voice, she means active voice, which is us actively expressing ourselves to God about our needs, our desires, our thoughts, what we want, what we would like to see. So active and first voice are the same thing. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Perfect. No, that's great. I'm glad you did. So yeah, first voice. First voice is the active voice, and God didn't have a problem with it. Jesus tells his disciples,
Hmm.
um, in is that in Luke, Rick? That
Ooh,
where I think you had quoted
to
it.
not
Oh
get.
no, 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 that's not the one. The
Uh,
no, it probably is in Luke as well. The
Here, I'll find it real quick. You're
the
you're
widow
talking about
woman.
the woman, right? Yeah. Hmm.
Yep, yep. So, um, Jesus tells his followers a parable about a woman who is a widow, which means she has no power. She doesn't have any menfolk to plead her case before the courts. She doesn't have any menfolk to go and
It's
break somebody's kneecaps.
Luke 18, 1 through 8.
Perfect. Luke 18. Thank you. Um, she has nobody to plead her case, so she
Hmm.
goes before this judge,
Yeah.
and he is very full of pride. He's a pompous dude, and he's a lazy dude. That's how Jesus describes him. He's not afraid of God, he's not afraid of people. But this woman keeps coming to him and saying, give me justice towards this man who is trying to ruin me. Give me justice. So her man, there's so much to unpack there. That man has a place of standing in the court. She
Hmm.
has none. She
Hmm.
has none. And the disciples are understanding where Jesus is coming from as he's telling this tale. So this woman, she has nothing. She has no standing. She goes to the judge and says, "Give me justice." And he's like, "Get out of here."
Get out
And
of
she comes
here.
back, "Give me justice. Get out of here." And she comes back, and the Bible tells us, because she's such a nudnik. Isn't that a great word? A nudnik, Nudnik.
Sounds like you choked on something.
He says, it means she's a nag. She's such a nag that he says to himself, "Man, I don't care about what God says. I don't care what the community says, but this woman won't leave me alone. So I'm going to give her justice just to shut her up."
Yeah.
And Jesus tells his disciples this so that they don't grow weary in doing good,
And
so that they don't get discouraged.
that's exactly right.
Go, because I know this is close to you.
You know what I was about to say, don't you? Here, let me look it up real quick, Luke. I'm going to read it to you guys directly, because to me, the first time I heard this, I was just like, man, wow. Because, you know, as believers, as Christians, we get tired of praying for things. You will see coming up in the episode after the next one, in an episode and a half from here. No, 2 episodes from here. We're going to be talking about part of the Silent Rebellion series is pain, difficulty, frustration in prayer, and viewed. I like the way that Shelley suggested we do it viewed through the lens of eternity. And one day when I was reading the Word and I was praying and I was frustrated, I'm not going to lie, you know, you will see, we're going to talk about it in a second, but prayer is an ebb and flow. You're not always in the mood to pray.
Oh, yeah.
You don't always feel like praying. In fact, honestly, there are times when I'm like, I don't want to talk to you about this stuff. I really don't. Just an honest disclaimer, right? But chapter 18 of Luke, verse 1 says, "Then Jesus," check this out, "Then Jesus told his disciples a parable to show them that they should always pray and not give up." And to me, the not give up part was what just floored me. I was just like, oh, Jesus knew that I was going to want to give up. He knew it. That's powerful. That speaks so much to the human condition. Like God is, God, one thing is to talk about the human condition as kind of an ethereal, lofty idea, right? That we have these problems, we have these issues. But when someone speaks to your actual condition and talks about it and says, "I know you want to give up. I know you're going to want to do it. Keep praying anyway. Keep praying anyway. Storm the gates of heaven anyway." And that's in essence the active voice, right?
That is the active voice, and it's such a good thing. I know that there are so many examples I could give of the active voice and of us having it. We'll talk just a tiny bit on Moses and his active voice. He wasn't badgering God for something to be done.
Which apparently
he wasn't like this woman coming.
Apparently is also okay, right? Which is kind of funny.
That's what that woman did. She badgered, and that's what Jesus said. Hey, be like this chick and do this.
Yeah.
She was a nudnik. Go badger God.
Yeah.
Don't give up. Don't give up. But for Moses, I will give you references, and then I'm not going to tell you which one's from which. If you care, you can go and get them yourself.
It's going to all be listed at the end in our actual podcast notes. You can check anything you want.
Absolutely. So Exodus 32, Numbers 14, and Numbers 21. Those are all chapters. Moses, man, the people he dealt with are exactly like us. Man, we are exactly like the children of Israel in the desert. We're so dumb that we think we're not, you know? Oh, I never would have done. I would have been happy eating manna. I never would have said I should go back to Egypt. Of course, we all would have. We would have been like, dude, I want onions. Let's go back. I like onions. I get it. I get where they're coming from. But they were jerks too. They were a bunch of whiny babies. And
Mhm.
God does all these amazing things. They're out in the desert, wandering a desert that would have taken, I don't know, a few months to cross, and it takes them 40
Crazy.
years because, ah, but they get angry and they start talking crap. Sorry, guys, a little bit of salty language there. You will hear that word.
Crap.
Sorry, Miss Bertha.
Oh my
I
gosh.
know.
Oh my
Sorry,
gosh.
guys. Um, and God gets ticked, and he's like, you know what, Moisha, buddy, move aside. I've had it with them. I am gonna. Sorry, guys, cats. I am gonna bless you and make a nation out of just you.
Yeah.
Forget it. We're starting over. I'm all of them. Here comes that lightning rod, right?
I think Jesus. I
And
think God
Moses.
spoke in Yiddish when he said, "Moisha, hey Moisha."
Get those nudniks.
Get the nudniks out of the way, Moisha.
But he he wants to destroy him. And you know what? I think God's all knowledgeable. I think he knew what was going to happen, and I think that's why we have these references. He
Yeah.
knew that Moses had already had a heart for these people, even
Yeah.
though they were so tiresome. And Moses says, "You know
Jeez.
what?
Yeah.
Repent of that, Lord. Do not take them. Don't kill them.
Yeah.
Let's give him another chance." And God does it. He relents. And then again, there's he goes up to give his law, and him and Moses are, they're having a good time. Starbucks is involved, and paninis, I think, and and so God's like laying it down. And he's like, "Here, hun, I'm going to write this out for you. You actually get to touch the divine." And Moses goes back down, and what are the children of Israel doing? They're
Living it
dancing
up.
naked, having an orgy around a golden calf, and
Oh, that old
that
chestnut.
time both Moses and God are mad. Phew, I would never do something like that. Not
It's
me.
yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, just like everybody that says, "Oh, I,
Um,
I would have never followed anything the Nazis did back in my day." Yeah, okay,
right.
sure. When the pressure was applied, let's see what you would and wouldn't do.
I wouldn't say crucify.
Yeah,
No, I wouldn't have denied either.
I
Yeah,
hope I wouldn't have.
whatever. I really probably would have. Um, and I'd like to think that I would stand against the Nazis. I stand against a lot of
Yeah,
things, but I know who I am too, and I know that I have to pray, Lord, don't let me be one that shrinks back, because I want to shrink back.
yeah. You know what, Shell?
I
That's
I
so good
want
that
to
you
be
say
found
that.
faithful.
Yeah, that's so good that you say that because I think that uh, I'm not going to steal your part because I know you want to talk about it with Mrs. Teresa, but prayer changes us, and that's why I'm telling you guys it's so important for us to be in prayer because prayer modifies us, and I mean that in a literal, physical, and spiritual, and emotional, and every sense. Prayer is a modification tool for us. We are new
And
creatures
wouldn't you
each
like
day.
to see a neurological study on that?
There are some, and they are quite fascinating. We'll have to get into that at a particular date in
Oh
the future.
man, the brain change.
Mhm.
Oh,
There, I don't
science.
remember what it was. Don't. Everybody's gonna watch this and they'll be like, "Ricky said that this crazy thing." Don't you dare try and take this out of context. I'm gonna do what Tim Pool does. Yes, I watch Tim Pool. I'm gonna do what Tim Pool does,
I do
and I'm gonna
too.
like insert random words so you can't make a clip out of it. But there was people. There was a reference when I was listening to a sermon by Ravi Zacharias that said, and this was by Ravi Zacharias that said that DNA itself, and I don't remember the exact way, DNA itself, this was in the thing, uh, is modified or can be modified. This is what was said, as far as I remember it, that DNA itself is modified when we accept Christ. This was it. This is not me making this up. That I don't remember
I
all the
know what you're
circumstance
talking
around
about.
it,
I
but
remember that you become of a different bloodline.
yes,
Yeah, yeah.
yes.
Yeah, yeah. I remember that.
Don't quote me. Don't be like, oh,
And
Ricky said some crazy thing. No, I didn't. I heard this. I have no, and I'm not claiming to verify it. I just, it's an interesting subject to look into.
absolute DNA.
I'm going to make that my own clip now and just be like, hey, look what I said. No, I'm just kidding.
No, but you're right. And Mother Teresa was very right with that statement. Absolutely. Spending time with God does change us. Intimacy leads to action.
Mm-hmm.
That's what she had said, something to that effect when they were giving her second Pulitzer Peace Prize, and she was like, "Man, it's not me. It's I spend time with God, and He changes me. He shows me places where He wants my hands, where He wants me to be moving for Him." And man, I respect the heck out of that because
Intimacy.
it's so true that
Just what you were saying. Intimacy leads to fruitful. I'm reading from the book. Intimacy leads to
cool.
fruitfulness, not the other way around. Where does it say it here? Those who prioritize a loving relationship with God, meeting with Him in prayer through stolen moments throughout the day, long stretches of disciplined contemplation, and fiery pleas of intercession, are those with whom He shares His divine power. It's a good quote. It's a good quote. I
want that divine power.
Yes.
Yep. Yes. That's a very good quote. Wow, that's very good. And that's, that's what motivated Moses. Mm-hmm. He spent so much time in the tent of meeting. That's what motivated Joshua as well, because the word tells us a lot of times that they would go into the tent of meeting, the cloud of God's presence, his Shekinah would come down, and everybody else would beat feet away, man, and Moses would stay. But the word tells us that Joshua, the son of Nun, also would remain in the tent of meeting. And look who the next ruler was. It wasn't one of Moses' sons. It wasn't one of Aaron's sons. It was Joshua, this faithful dude who remained in God's presence, even though it was uncomfortable. That's why everybody ran. That's why they got away. They would tell him, please tell God to go elsewhere. We can't with him anymore. No more of these rumblings. No more of this tightness in our beings. Could you go and talk to him somewhere else, maybe that mountain over there or something? But that's not how Joshua was. And man, it's true. Their perspective was changed when Joshua and Caleb went into that land, and they saw the Nephilim, they saw the giants, and their 10 compatriots were like, they're giants in the land. We look like grasshoppers in comparison to them. Mm-hmm. And then the focus of Jacob and of Caleb was, we can take them. And you know what? The grapes are the size of your head. One grape. And their perspective was changed, which prayer often does to me. Dude, I'll have somebody and they're so difficult. We call them sandpaper people in my group of friends. And I'll go before God, Lord, this sandpaper person, you know what? Show them how much you love them, how high and how wide and how deep and how long your love is for them.
Show them how much you love them.
Show them. Because that'll change them, man. And you know what? And I do go, I am that mad. Them. Change them with your love, Jesus. And then what does he do? He changes me. My perspective changes. I get compassion where I didn't have it.
You know what is interesting, Shell, is that what you're actually mentioning, with your permission, I will actually use this to transition to our next point. But I didn't mean for it to be that way. It really just kind of gave its
go
to it. Is that we pray those prayers, right? And they're half-hearted because we don't want to deal with stuff. And that actually is something called the passive voice. which is the I guess they call it the third voice. Yeah, we're calling it the third voice. More because it's consecutive and sort of like where the interaction happens. But the passive voice refers to, and just as a general, I'm going to let Shell run with this one too. It refers to taking a back seat, quite literally, passive, right? If you allow everybody else to get ahead of you, get around you, then you are taking the passive frame of reference, of action, or of unaction or disaction, inaction, right? So
inaction.
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 None of the prefixes I used. Well done. And I like to use
Who's the
them
linguist?
all. Yes, go linguist. We describe language. We're not, we're not prescriptivists about language. So clearly that's the case. So we're talking that's what the passive voice would be. Do you want to comment a little bit on that? Do you want me to you tell me?
Passive voice. You know what? I don't have a lot to say about the passive voice.
Okay.
Don't do it. I think it's wimpy. It's unbelieving. You're just going through the motions. So to me, you're kind of wasting your time.
Yeah.
The only thing I do have a caveat about it. So take it away. And if you don't get to that caveat towards the end, then I will about it.
Okay. I don't think we're going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but Shell and I were talking just before this podcast at length, as we do because we're talkers, right? And we were talking about how the active voice tends to be, I call it something like juvenile or callow because it's an initial response, right? And a lot of times as believers, when we don't know how to pray, right, we're still learning how to pray. And we're always learning how to pray. But I mean, when we're in our kind of our fundamental stages of learning how to pray, we want, ask. And that's not wrong. That's not wrong. Jesus shows us that's not wrong, right? There's backing for it. We talked about it. But, and this is the caveat, right? We're not to abuse that ability. So that's kind of the introduction to prayer for most of us, right? We're like, this is the problem, and I need that, and I still struggle with that. I'm not going to pretend like it's I'm absent or above that, but the opposite is something that happens a lot of times when the opposing thing happens, like Jesus was talking about. He tells his disciples about that parable, right? So that they won't get weary in praying, in prayer, and in asking and petitioning, right? The other thing is what happens after you do that. You become passive. You start doing prayers that are not heartfelt, that are not sincere, that are not bold, that are not anything, right? The passive voice is the complete opposite, whereas the active voice is volitional, right? The passive voice is the removing of the volition. We have no passion in our prayers. We don't expect God to do anything. They are
activity.
Yeah, and I was talking to Shell. I always get my concepts messed up because I'm Lord willing in the near future actually going to go to seminary or take seminary at some point. I would really like to. And I was asking, I was like, isn't that like the absence or the removal of self responsibility or impact, both of those? Isn't that Calvinism? And Shell was like, yeah, it is Calvinism. So to me, the passive voice is a more layman's term or layman's way of saying Calvinism. And I wrote this out, and I'm going to read it because I was thinking about how do we put skin on this, skin and bones here, right? Like, show me an example. Well, for me, an example is procrastinating out of practicality or any other slew of excuses is neither a place of peace nor a demonstration of faith in God. I'm going to read that again. Procrastinating out of practicality or for any other slew of excuses is neither a place of peace nor a demonstration of faith in God. So that means, what am I saying with that? Basically, making excuses and calling that peace and being like, oh, everything's okay, God is good. No, that is not what God calls us to. God calls us to confront things. Now, I understand we can't always confront things, right? There's a period sometimes where where we're reeling, like Shaw was talking about when they got the news about her husband having AIDS and how to deal with it and how to confront it. Shell needed a hot minute, I'm sure, to process all that, right? And that's fair, but don't stay there, because it becomes passivity. It becomes passive voice, and your prayers become ineffective, useless. Let's just call it what it is. They're not prayers.
Discouraging.
Yeah, they're not real prayers. They're just like I was watching a podcast the other day, and I heard a guy. I related. I was like, oh, that's passive voice. He said, you know those prayers, like you pray them, but you're like, God, I hope you don't answer this. That's passive voice when you pray. That's passive voice when you pray. Yep.
That's good. And you know what? Here's my caveat to that. Yeah, it's with the what can go wrong with a passive voice, because a lot of people will say, but the word tells us to be still and know that I am God. And it totally does. Yeah, Psalm 46, I think that is. But you read the whole Psalm. Man, God's kind of bragging a bit. Look at what I have done for Israel. I've done this thing and this thing, and but y'all are still striving. Could you just be still and know that I am God? He's not even talking about talking to him. He's talking about quit trying to take everything into our own hands. But there's
it's an
the term Selah.
Overactive first voice, right? So he's like, hey, take it down a notch, huh?
I'm God here. Who's God here? I'm God here.
I forgot.
But there's that term Selah, and Selah is a stop and ponder. I think it kind of is a rest in the song, in the poetry, and biblical scholars aren't totally sure what to do with Selah, but we like to banter. Selah, oh, be still, just rest in God and know that He is, which I'm not saying there's a problem with. There is a time for me to shut up and just let God do the talking. But where I see a big problem in the modern Western church, and Stephen Bancarz, Bancarz, is a really great reference to talk way more about this subject that I'm going to just bring up a poquito bit of. We will do a contemplative prayer where we bring in aspects of other religions, New Age in particular, and people try to empty themselves. Empty themselves so that they can be filled with the universe, with God, to have a deeper communion. Some people will call it soaking. And I get where you're coming from in the aspect of, again, just chill and let God minister to you. There's validity in that. But there's also this manipulation that is coming to the church under the aegis, or under the disguise of the auspices, much better word, of you transcending your sinful nature, I guess is how they do it, your physical nature, and you try to be more spiritual, it's like and commune with the spiritual realm, right? More. Yeah, and you know what? There are people who will teach that you can. This is nauseating to me. That you can go into heaven, you leave your body in this prayer state and go into some levels of heaven and commune with God, and that just sounds like babble to me. And the whole ziggurats and what they were trying to do with assailing the gates of heaven and trying to bring the gods or the God under our dominion. And so for me, that I very much can see what could go wrong here with that aspect, that you being so passive that you find a passive aggressive way to get power. And so you do it by emptying yourself and bringing in the spirit guide, the God, the whatever you end up foolishly calling it.
To speak to that just a little bit, I heard Ravi Zacharias make a really good statement about this. Now, you guys can feel however you want to about him. I always make that disclaimer. But he had some
He's a
solid,
man. He was fallible.
and he had solid
He
theology.
sinned like the rest
Yep,
of us.
yep.
Absolutely. He had really good theology. He was a
And
sinner like me.
yeah, like all of us. Um, and he made a really good point about this is that when he was talking to a group of students, I want to say it was in Singapore or Nepal, I don't remember where Buddhist concepts and emptying oneself and meditation are much more prevalent than here in the West, although that's rapidly changing as well. Uh,
Right.
he made a really good point, which was you guys are unable to reconcile the impersonal and personal. Which what he meant was is that in those kind of Eastern religions, or that we typically ascribe to Eastern thought, right? Those actually tend towards emptying oneself, and they don't say it this way, but it's exactly what it is. If you're part of the universe, then you're praying to yourself. You're praying to yourself. It's full circle, inadvertent, indirect humanism. That's what it is. That's what it is.
Hmm.
Because you're going to pray to
That's
something no
great.
matter what you do, right? I won't bore you guys to death with crazy details about what we're going to start talking about in the future, but transhumanism is the worship and prayer of oneself, of
A human. Yep.
deification,
100%.
right? And then you can talk to yourself all
Get
day
God
and,
out of the way. We're not even going to die.
oh, there's so much to talk about.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's why you got to pray. That's why we got to pray. We got to
All
be alert.
the things.
Yep, yep, yep.
Absolutely.
Anyway,
So
that's all I
so
was gonna say.
having brought that out, that was all I had to. Not a whole lot about passive voice. I'm not a super huge fan of most of the parts of it. When God tells us shut up and listen, we ought to
No.
shut up and
But it's
listen.
usually because it's a problem because of we're being too active, which is interesting. I think we kind of just discovered
Right.
that, or I did anyway.
Well, and you know what? So I kind of am a bit of a follower of Aristotle in his belief of balance in all things. A lot of other things Aristotle has I'm not good with, but I truly believe that balance is where we need to be. And between the first voice and the third voice is the middle voice, and that's where the balance is. It is um, I'm going to go ahead and quote right from
Do it.
Tyler because I couldn't say this better. I am an active participant, but the action didn't start with me. And that sums up balance really, really well. I am an active participant, but the action didn't start with me.
Hmm.
Uh, Middle voice is unity.
Yeah,
And here we'll go back to when the disciples said, "Hey, teach us how to pray."
yeah,
And he says, "Okay, that when you pray, don't make a big show of it. Go to your closet. These are the things you pray." And it's a good old paternoster. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Um, and then I don't have this in front of me, so let's hope I
you're good.
get
You're
it
good.
in the right order. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass
Trespass
against
against
us.
us.
Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For yours is the power and the kingdom and the glory forever. Amen. And sorry if that's not verbatim. I think I know it in at least the NIV and the King James Version.
I think you forgot an extra
Maybe even
forever.
the Church of English Version. I might have got it slightly out of order, but
No, you're good. No,
Jesus
I think you're
gave,
right.
the way for us to pray. And honestly, he reiterates it again in good old Luke, in Luke
Mm-hmm.
22, where he's praying in the garden and he says, "You know what, Father, I know our will is right. I know our plan is good, but if we could come up with a last minute alternative like they do in the movies, I'd be down for that. If you can take this cup from me, do it, but
Yeah.
not my will, yours be done. Um, and then Mary, man, oof. Uh, while I don't consider her the queen of heaven, she definitely had the right idea when
Hmm.
answering God's call in Luke chapter 1, verse 38, where she says, I am the Lord's servant. May it happen to me according to your word. When the angel has just told her, hey, you get to be an integral part of God finally bringing that lamb that we've been waiting for. Messiah's
Yeah.
coming. He's going to come through you. Caveat, virgin girl, I know you're planning on marrying Joseph and you are pure, but the whole world's going to think that you're not. Your
Yep.
plans, they're different from what you thought they were going to be. And in Mary's mind, she had to think of all this. Oh, Messiah is finally coming. Oh, I'm so grateful, and I get to have a part in this. And oh, what are people going to think about me? How is my father going to deal with this um, besmirching of our family's reputation? It's going to be ruined. Is my family going to ostracize me? What is Joseph going to think? How in the world is this going to play out? I am the Lord's servant.
It was crazy because
May
as
it
I was reading,
happen to me.
uh, I
Mm.
read this and I was like, whoa, I didn't even think about that. Mary must assume that this news brings with it the cost of divorce and the broken heart of the man she loves. Then there's the legal issue. The Levitical law lists execution as the penalty for adultery. Yeah, that was not something I had ever thought about until I read that, and I went, "Oh, that's totally true."
But isn't that how God works all the time? Hey, I have an opportunity to have a really great ministry sometime when I'm a grown up. I'm going to be able to tell other people how you can forgive somebody who rapes you and how you can heal from it. Oh, but you know what? That means I get to go through molestation and rape before that,
Yep,
you know?
yep,
And
I get it.
I've been there, done that. So I can tell you that my 6 and 7-year-old self, I don't know if I would have said, I am your servant, be it unto me according to your word, but I think I would have. I've definitely said it in many years since then when people talk about what could you change? If you could
Hmm.
change anything, would you? I wouldn't change anything because my mess can be my message. And that's exactly what God did with Mary. I mean, this could have been the end of her. This mess became the
The
message
end
of
of her.
salvation to
Yeah.
all mankind.
Hmm.
All mankind. God's ways are crazy. Sorry, black and white cat. Um, but that middle voice, that not my will. If you could do something different, I'm down. Not my will, however it has to be for your glory, God, for
Yeah.
your honor, then I am all for that. And I don't think it says, hey, crucify me. I'm going to enjoy it. It's going to be a good thing. I mean, I know the word says, for the joy set before him, Christ endured the cross. Um, but it doesn't mean he enjoyed being on the cross at all.
Hmm.
But he looked the big picture, like you said. We'll talk about through the lens of eternity and how we
Mm-hmm.
get through the hurt of now by focusing on the lens of eternity. It doesn't make your hurt go away, but it
Mm-mm.
makes maybe your hurt manageable.
Yeah.
When Mary says, I am the Lord's servant, she says, Father, you tell me who I am. You tell me who I am. I am your servant. So I can do what you want me to do. I can say what you want me to say. I can react how you want me to react because I know that I am your servant. there's so much to unpack right there in the middle voice, and every time we pray, however many times a day that is for you, for whatever situations it is that you are praying over, we remember, I'm the servant. This doesn't start with me, Lord. I'm bringing my stuff to you, or this person to you, or just aligning my day, remembering that today is the day you have made for me. I'm aligning my day, and so I am saying, Lord, help the way I think and speak and act and react. Help those all to be in alignment with your
Mm.
will. And I guess that's how you act it out. You act it out by doing those things. Remembering whose servant you are, and the fact that
Yep.
though I am a servant, I am a servant of the Most High God. I am a servant of the thing that thought up everything I know and things that I will never understand. He thought it up. He thought up light. He said, light would be a good idea. Light. And there
Mm.
was light, and he sustains it. I'm his servant.
Amen.
So I think that's my big thing for us. Spending time with God in prayer produces in us a desire to bear good fruit. And
Yep.
we all want to be fruitful.
Yep. It's very
And
true.
and I guess also don't do that third voice. Pray specifically so that when God answers, he's answering. Don't pray some general thing so that you can attribute
Make up
everything to him
make up
because
the
you're
end
afraid
later.
he's too weak. Right, right, right. No, pray specifically now and watch God come through. He's big enough to back up what he says.
Hmm.
And
It's good
prayer
stuff.
is the mission, or sorry, prayer is the furnace that fuels the mission. Prayer is the furnace that fuels the mission.
Yep.
It's a thing that keeps us going. I think that's it.
Cool. Well,
End of episode 1 of the Silent Rebellion series.
woo. I guess I'll just give some commentary on some of that stuff. I wanted to throw out a. I like throwing out disclaimers. I'm just going to make a shirt that says "I throw out disclaimers." Um, but we are fully aware that, and Shell, we were all talking about all of this conceptually is all about based on Greek and Hellenistic Greek specifically. I chose to kind of
Oh,
leave this at the end just so
yeah.
we could kind of use this for impact because there is super good intellectual and theological and spiritual value in it. So I chose to kind of wait till the end to talk about this, but I want you guys to know that there is a grammatical basis for what we're talking about. The active voice, I think you guys very very well understand. It's where the agent, the initiator, does something, right? And typically that's to another person or an item or some other animate object, right? Um, there's passive voice, which we talked about, which is also in English. Both these are in English, active and passive. Passive is where you're removed from whatever's happening, right? Like the action happens to you. You do not initiate that action. But the point of the middle voice is that you can do both, which is super weird. And it's very specific to Hellenistic Greek. I don't know if modern day Greek, I didn't look it up to be honest. But having that kind of thought in mind, I'm just going to kind of explain it so that this will hopefully help you guys think about prayer the way that we're talking about it. As an overview, prayer being compared to the middle voice is used kind of philosophically, or what's the word? Metaphorically is a better word for it. We're thinking about prayer in a space where we also can practice grammar, right? Grammar is reflective of the things we pray because we use words to pray them. It's just kind of the scientific breaking down of all that stuff. So when we talk about a word like in English, we say, I wash. Well, what do you wash? You wash clothes, right? You can't just wash. I guess you could say I'm washing, but that's weird. Like there has to be something else. That's called a necessarily transitive verb because it transits from subject to object, right? You have to wash something. You wash clothes. An intransitive is something that you cannot combined with anything else, right? And the example I looked up was, let's see where, in English, right? So we'll just use it for English. In English, you can't just I wash. That just doesn't work. In Greek, however, I wash in the middle voice or the second voice does work. And what it means is, I think, the reason that Tyler chose this topic. I wash for my benefit or for my consequence. So when we apply that to prayer, what does that look like? I pray for my benefit or my consequence. You can pray to God, and if that's the case, and God is your object, because you're the subject, you're the one that's activating. So if you pray and you just say I pray in middle voice, what are you saying? You're essentially saying, this is something I initiate and will have repercussions on me. Now, repercussions doesn't have to be pejorative. It can be a positive as well, right? It could be a benefit, but it can also be consequential. And prayer is often that way. It is both it can be both, at least the way we feel it, right? We can feel like it's a negative because sometimes we pray for things and they don't pan out like we expected. Or they don't even, nothing even happens sometimes, right? Which is even, I think, even more infuriating to people than anything else, right? And that's where the second voice is at. So when Tyler talks about middle voice for prayer, when I pray and I pray for my own benefit, he's emphasizing, just like the gospel does, he's emphasizing that prayer is good and is necessary and does have consequence and does have effect. There's an emphasis on that prayer and what it does, even though you're the originator. And when he talks about, and this is important, when he talks about us participating, even though we didn't start it, I finally got it. Literally, I think like last night, I was like, oh, I see what he's saying. He is calling participation, and I actually wrote it down because otherwise I'm going to say it wrong. Participation equals the initiative of new avenues and ideas of prayer into what God has already started. That's what he means. So when we pray,
God's already working. We're just getting in on it.
Exactly. When we step into this and we occupy this agent and participant kind of reality, God already set the thing up, right? There's nothing we can do that's new. There's nothing new for us to make. All the stuff's already made. We can, well, even inventions technically aren't inventions. They're inventions to us, but I mean, to God, he already knows all of it. So prayer is the same way. There's no difference. I guess I just kind of wanted to provide that caveat because even though the grammar doesn't pan out exactly like he was talking about it, there is solid conceptual ideas around what he's saying. Just remember, guys, I'm going to close. I'm not going to go into other notes I have. It's not really relevant. But what I will say is remember that, and this goes for me, this goes for Shelley, this goes for all of us, that prayer itself is a powerful thing because God can be emotionally moved by it. And we know that because we see Exodus 32 where Moses prays and he's like, bro, you can't wipe out the people. What are the Egyptians going to think? Remember, you took up, you just brought them out of there. Remember? And God's like, man, I don't want to mess with these people, but he relents, right? He relents. And that, got a squeaky toy?
Sorry, dog toy.
You're good. God relents, which is amazing. So that is one aspect that's very cool, right? That God will respond to us, but it's also
right. Hey, Rick,
what's up?
Sorry, New Testament version of that too. Jesus tells Peter, "The devil has wanted to sift you, Peter, but I have prayed for you."
Yeah.
And then he tells him how he's going to betray him.
Ooh, that's good.
Just I mean, it's all over. It's all over. Jesus, John 17, Jesus prays. Sorry guys, my dogs are something else sometimes.
No, you're good.
Jesus prays for his disciples right before he goes to the cross, man, like right before John 17, and he prays also for us because he prays for his disciples and for those who come to know him through them, and that's you and me.
Yeah.
And he prays that we would be unified, so like he is unified with the Father, so that people will know that Jesus did indeed come to save us. So that intercession, and the word says, oh gosh, who is it? Oh, guys, I don't have the reference. I'm sorry. Somebody will know it off as soon as they say it, but uh, we're told, don't sin, but when you do, remember that you have an advocate who stands at the right hand of the Father, making intercession for you. That's prayer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Jesus
absolutely
prays
right.
for us
Um,
right now. So we have
yeah.
lots of examples of it.
Just don't, I guess just like Jesus said, right? Don't get discouraged. Like there is ebb and flow in prayer. And if you're in a position right now where that's a difficult thing for you, be encouraged. Know that all the other saints all over the world that are truly seeking the face of the Father are suffering that same exact reality. Both suffering and taking advantage of, right? Oh, here we go. It's 1 John 2:1. My dear children, I write this to you so that you will not sin. But if anybody does sin, we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ, the righteous one. I
Good
just leave
old
you with that.
John, man, he's a favorite
Yeah.
of mine.
Yep. He's quite a dude, man. Quite a dude, man. Without the comma. So,
He's a dude, man.
yeah, guys, just be encouraged. When God responds and He doesn't respond, He's mysterious. We're not supposed to get it. That's part of. I mean, that's kind of the mystery of any relationship, right? You don't completely understand your friends. You certainly don't understand your spouse or your lover or your kids or anyone. You just don't fully understand it. That's the mystery of relationship, and that's what God calls us to, which is right
Absolutely.
there in the middle voice. Cool.
Rick,
Well,
what are we talking about next time on CTDW?
oh, it's way too early. Crap. Next week, we are continuing our. Thank you, guys. Thank you. I appreciate that. I just want to thank the Academy for. No. I actually don't want to thank the Academy. It's the last thing in the world I want to be watching. We are going to continue our Silent Rebellion series, which is episode 2 of the Silent Rebellion series, and it will be focused around prayer rhythm. And I will just leave kind of a tagline, which has become my favorite line, and I have to look it up in the book and find it again. But Tyler says that he quotes a philosopher asking about theology. And the philosopher says, when they ask the philosopher, what do you think it is that is plaguing mankind's spiritual life? And he says, he goes, haste is the worst enemy of the spiritual life. So we will be talking about prayer rhythm, hastiness in prayer. I think that this is probably right after middle voice. It sequentially works very well because it talks about kind of how funny. The first episode is about active prayer and all that stuff, and so it's kind of about active prayer. I would say this next episode is really more about middle voice, but more about how we live our lives so that we live in a middle voice. And our final one deals with the passive aspect, which is pain. What do we do? How do we act? How do we react? So next week, in 2 weeks coming up after this one, we will be talking about hastiness in our spiritual lives and learning prayer rhythm, why it's so important, how it plays an impact. And I guarantee you guys it does. Whatever it be you're dealing with, whatever it be you're thinking about. Yeah. I guess I'll plug in all our stuff real quick. Yeah.
Sounds perfect.
Awesome. Guys, we are the Christian Theological Dark Web, CTDW. I got it wrong last week. I was like, oh, crap, last time. I said CTDW. It's CTDW, the Christian Theological Dark Web. We thank you guys for joining. I know this has been a long one, And we're going to work on getting a little bit more concise, but we're doing okay for now. There's a Bigfoot in the background, apparently. And
He's Chewbacca. Thank you.
yes. Oh, sorry, got it wrong. Guys, you can contact us at the Christian Theological Dark Web at gmail.com. Again, that's the Christian Theological Dark Web at gmail.com with any questions, comments, and the like. You can also reach us at our information, which is our landing page. It's got all of our social media. You can look us up on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. We also obviously have the podcast through Anchor and Spotify where you can listen and watch. And that is basically it. If you want to get in contact with us, when you go to our landing page, our social media landing page, which is like a link tree that we have in the description below. Sorry, I don't have it off the top of my head at the moment. But if you look down there, you can find us, and you can get a hold of Shelley or myself. Shelley's landing page is coming soon. By the time this comes out, it might already be done. I just need to work on it and get that solidified so that we're contactable. Yeah, wow, exciting. This is our first legit episode, and I guess by the time this comes out, or by the time we finish this one, our first episode will already have aired. So awesome.
Yeah, 2 days from now, right? Well,
That's right.
Monday, 3 days, something
Monday.
like that.
That's
Close,
right.
close.
Give us a round of
So
applause,
exciting.
guys. Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
I'm curious as to which is going to come first, our first drop or my grandson. So,
Oh my goodness. He's about ready,
cool
huh?
things to look forward to. Yeah, that kid, he just needs to make his entrance. His mama needs to what's that word? Kick him out. Come on, what's the term?
Expel?
Evict him. Evict that kid.
Oh my goodness.
Evict him.
kiddo. Well, he's
Yep,
gotta go
it's
somewhere.
time for his eviction. I need to hold him in my arms.
Good stuff. Guys, well, I'm just going to leave you with a quick blessing. Give me 2 seconds. I'm pulling it up because I don't have it memorized yet. I should. Good night. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Many blessings. Thanks for joining us, guys. We love you.
Amen. Bye, all.
This has been the Christian Theological Dark Web. Thank you for tuning in to the CTDW Studios. God bless.